Minimum wage will always be minimum wage. I'm just going to use a minimum wage of $7.50 per hour. It's not the fact that it is $7.50 per hour, but just makes the illustration easy because I want to move it up to $15 now, which would be double. So we're just going to state that it's $57.50 per hour. So is raising the minimum wage good for America? Let me begin by stating that the minimum wage will always be minimum wage. Minimum wage is meant to be a starting wage. If you stay with the company, you can get cost of living raises, merit raises, and promotions. Having a high minimum wage encourages people to bounce from job to job, knowing that they'll get the high minimum wage. However, the purpose of the minimum wage is to be able to hire people that are not necessarily productive in hopes that they will stay and to become more productive. Raising the minimum wage will cause unemployment among the less educated and experienced workers. The employer would rather have a productive person at $15 an hour than a less educated, experienced, and less productive person for the same amount. The employer was willing to take the risk on the less educated and experienced at $7.50, but cannot afford to take that risk at $15 per hour. So let me use an example. I will use the minimum wage of $7.50 that we raised to $15 per hour. Now I'm going to go through this whole scenario, but I'll also do it through a PowerPoint, which would be a little bit quicker and easier. We're going through 3 different scenarios. In this scenario, a small business owner, she hires 16 people at $7.50 per hour. And those 16 people can put out 1 widget per employee per hour. She also has 4 employees that are paid $15 per hour, and they can produce 3 widgets per employee per hour. And those $15 per hour people train the people that are there at $7.50, the new people. So now that means that she has a payroll of $180 per hour. So per hour, you have 16 people paid $7.50, it's $120 per hour for those 16 people, and they make 16 widgets with 1 widget per person per hour at a profit of $8.75 per widget would equal $140 that they can make. So that's a profit of $140 for the widgets and $120 for the payroll. So she would profit $20 per hour per hour for the 16 people. And then per hour for the 4 people, they get paid $15 an hour, so that'd be $60 per hour. They make 12 widgets at $8.75 per hour. That'd be $105 for a net profit of $45. So that means that the payroll for the annual payroll then would come out to $374,400 annually. So per year, those 16 people paid at $7.50 would cost $249,600. They make the widgets, and they come out with a net profit of $41,600. And the 4 people paid $15, and it would cost $124,800 in payroll, and the net profit after the $218,400 for the widgets, they make $93,600. So now we take that payroll expense, the gross profit, which is the profit from both the 2 groups, comes out at $509,600, and minus all the other expenses, the fixed and variable expenses, taxes, utilities, cost of raw materials, shipping, etc., at $95,000. We come up with a net profit to the owner of $40,200. And for anybody that just wants to look at the numbers, this is all in Excel. So after each presentation, I'll do a little Excel. You can stop it and look at the numbers if you like. So in this scenario, the government says no, everybody has to be paid $15 per hour. So the 16 people that were making $7.50 are now making $15, which increases the payroll up to $499,200 per year for net loss for the 16 people because they make 1 widget per hour at minus 208. Now the people that were making the 4 people making $15 before stayed the same. So that means that the annual payroll is 624,000. The gross profit between the two groups is 509,600 minus expenses of 95,000 needs to let the net loss to the owner of 209,400. And this is the Excel for the present presentation. Now, if you want to look at those numbers. It was obvious in that last scenario, the 16 people get paid $15 per hour would cause the owner to lose a bunch of money, which she's not going to do that. So what she can do, though, is increase the price of the widgets to the customer to $13.04 to increase her profit, and her net profit to her would still be around $40,000. But this results in inflation. And this is the Excel for the present presentation. Now, if you want to look at those numbers. So there's one other scenario. Let's just say that the owner obviously doesn't want to lose money. She can't sell her product at that new $13.04. The other option is to terminate the 16 people and hire half those many people, 8 people at $15 an hour to replace them, but they'll be more productive. And actually, she ends up making more money by doing this. So this causes unemployment to increase. And this is the Excel for the present presentation. Now, if you want to look at those numbers. So let's look at the scenario, each of these scenarios. The first scenario was we keep all the people at the current minimum wage and give them the new minimum wage, which will cause the owners to lose money. Well, of course, the owners don't want to have that, and so they could also fire all the people at the current minimum wage and hire more experienced and educated employees who will be more productive and justify the higher wage, which results in unemployment of the less educated and experienced people. Those are the people they're supposed to be trying to help, supposedly, but the actual result is that they become unemployed. Or if the owner cannot find educated and experienced people to replace the lower educated, experienced people, then small owners could go out of business. So not only do you have unemployment, but now you have the loss of the small business. So then, and why can't they find the educated and experienced people? Because all the big corporations are grabbing them up, and the little guys can't compete. So then there's also, if the owner cannot find educated, experienced people to replace lower educated people, then the smaller people could increase the cost of the product, which causes inflation. And once again, they're having to compete against the big corporations, and the big corporation can hold the prices down longer than the little guys can. So the little guys end up going out of business. So inflation is a result here. So just make it a little more close snippets so you can see it a little easier. So small business owners lose money, or unemployment of the less educated, experienced people, or a loss of the small business, or inflation. None of these are good results. So now let's do a side by side, the losers and the winners in this scenario. What appears to be people wanting to take care of the less fortunate, so the ones at minimum wage, to double the minimum wage. It sounds like they're really taking care of them, but are they really? Let's look at the losers. Remember, the losers are small business owners lose money, unemployment of the less educated, experienced people, the loss of the small business, and inflation. Now, the U.S. has to compete in the global economy. Therefore, it makes products more expensive in foreign markets. That increases trade deficits. So it's not good for the United States as a whole either. So now who are the winners? Well, the large corporations and the politicians. As small businesses fold, the large companies can gain market share by taking over the small business customers. Large corporations can afford to hold prices down until small businesses fold. Then they can raise their prices to make up the difference in lost revenue. All a politician has to do is to promise you a higher wage. It seems that they really care for you. Therefore, they get your vote. But what is the end result? What is the overall result? They get your vote, they get more power, more money, but you, the less informed, the less educated and experienced people, are the losers. So the worker gets an increase in their wages, but inflation increases by the same percentage, which means that their buying power has not improved. Those currently at $15 per hour will demand more because they are more senior and more productive. They get raises, which means that the people who got the increased minimum wage are still at minimum wage compared to the other workers. It is all relative. It is all relative. You don't gain anything. The U.S. loses in the trade war with other countries because the inflation causes the goods and services to be more expensive. The less educated, experienced get laid off and must pay inflated prices. The only winners is the politician who wins the election by promising a high minimum wage. They are either deceptive or naive, either of which is unacceptable because it is negative for the employees and to the U.S. as a whole. Just always remember, do not look at the short-term gains, but take into consideration the long-term ramifications. And the workers will finally realize that minimum wage will always be minimum wage. Now, each of these lessons that I do, I try to give my own input. As you can tell, I'm a numbers guy, so I try to put numbers to give some meat to the bones of the conversation. But now I always try to give you some reference material. So this is one person that I believe is the most important person in this time period, especially in the area of economics. He's an African American, great. He's one of the most intelligent, not just most intelligent, but one of the wisest people that I've ever read or studied. And his name is Thomas Sowell. If you have never heard of Thomas Sowell, you need to look up Thomas Sowell, especially when it comes to economics. Look up minimum wage exploitation from the Hoover Institute, and I've given you the website. Then also The Vision of the Anointed by Thomas Sowell. This is done by Liberty Pen, but it's also done through the Hoover Institute. This whole video is good, however, regarding minimum wage. You can begin around 9:30, so that'll save you some time. There's a whole bunch of information on this video, but to get to the minimum wage, just go to 9:30. And then Discrimination Disparity with Thomas Sowell, also from the Hoover Institute. This whole video is good also. But however, regarding minimum wage, you can view 1730 to 1846. So that'll save you some time. Like I said, you can review the whole thing, but as far as minimum wage, just stay on those parameters. And continuing with that same video, which is listed below, he states, and here's the money quote: in short, no one is employable or unemployable absolutely, but only relative to a given pay scale. And that highlights the significance of economic logic that explains why the most valuable workers, the low-skilled, uneducated, teenagers, etc., are the group that is the most harmful by minimum wage laws. Those laws artificially raise the wages of low-skilled workers without increasing their productivity and therefore significantly reduce their employability relative to higher skilled workers. For example, in the study from the team of researchers at the University of Washington of Seattle, $15 an hour minimum wage, they reported, emphasis added, our preferred estimates suggest that the Seattle minimum wage ordinance caused hours worked by low-skilled workers, those earning under $19 per hour, to fall by 9.4% during the 3 quarters when the minimum wage was $13 per hour, resulting in a loss of 3.5 million hours worked per calendar quarter. Alternative estimates show the number of low-wage jobs declined by 6.8%, which represents a loss of more than 5,000 jobs. The work of least paid workers might be performed more efficiently by more skilled and experienced workers commanding a substantially higher wage. Now, this is what I've shown with numbers, but he says it more eloquently. So continuing on with that same video, the video above features the reading of the section, Thomas Sowell's 1980 book, Knowledge and Decisions, where the brilliant economist explains some of the economic dynamics of minimum wage laws. Here's a key excerpt from starting at about 4:51 in the video. There is no inherent reason why low-skilled or high-risk employees are less employable than high-skilled, low-risk employees. Someone who is 5 times as valuable to an employer is no more or less employable than someone who is 1/5 as valuable, when the pay differences reflect the differences in benefits to the employer. This is more than a theoretical point. Historically, lower skilled levels do not prevent black males from having labor force participation rates higher than that of white males for every U.S. census from 1890 through 1930. Since then, the general growth of wage fixing arrangements, including minimum wage laws, labor unions, civil service pay scales, etc., has reversed that and made it more and more blacks unemployable despite the raising levels of education and skills, absolutely and relative to whites. Now, this is Thomas Sowell, not me speaking. So, the bottom line, Thomas Sowell's comments illustrate an economic reality that is frequently overlooked. Workers compete against other workers, not employers, to find jobs and to get higher wages. Employers compete against other employers to find the best workers. In other words, low-skilled workers compete against high-skilled workers in the labor market. Low-skilled workers who would be employable at a lower wage become unemployable at an artificially high wage, and that explains the perverse cruelty of minimum wage laws. It inflicts the greatest harm on the very workers that it is alleged to designed to help. And primarily the higher paid people, the minimum wage and the overall environment of the employment industry, the higher ones are paid in the big cities. In these particular cities, they just have a higher wage in those states. Then the other states, usually the smaller states, they have less minimum wage, and so the overall environment is more is small, but it's all relative. So in the other states where the minimum wage may be lower, the cost of living is lower. So it's all relative. So when the some representative wants to come out, or the Congress wants to come out and say they want to increase double the minimum wage, for instance, it doesn't affect those big cities or those states with the big cities because they're already up fairly high. But what hurts is the lower, smaller states and the smaller businesses. So this is not good for middle America or small America. And now I'd like to take a time to give you a little bit more of my insight. As you saw the Electoral College, I focused on California, New York, and Illinois, which has the 3 biggest cities in the United States. They already have plans for minimum wage of $15 per hour. They're either at or going to be $15 per hour in the short term. The chart that I'm using now comes from the website listed below, but I've modified just for our discussion, so I've condensed a lot of this. In this chart, I took 8 of the higher minimum wages in the United States, which happen to be Democratic states. Then I compared them to 8 Republican states. This shows that the Democratic states already have high minimum wages. They have more welfare programs and have a greater debt. The Republican states have lower minimum wages and overall have the lower cost of living. They also focus on being user tax states. Therefore, the important issue to monitor is the relative effect of minimum wage versus the cost of living and our competitiveness on the world stage. After reviewing this material, it is obvious that a mandatory minimum wage of $15 will not affect the Democratic states like that it will the Republican states, with many being small states. This is another example of socialist welfare states imposing their ideology on capitalist Sowell-type economies.
I'm not trying to win your vote. I'm not trying to get millions of dollars. I'm not trying to control billions and trillions of dollars. I just want you to have the truth. I want to give you a second set of data so you can compare it to what's being taught today in our institutions of higher learning, in the media, the general public. So you have two sets of data so you can determine for yourself what is the truth so you can be part of the solution. This is called critical thinking. You have to have two sets of data. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that are just brilliant. For instance, that Thomas Sowell. Go look him up. It's an amazing man. He has a lot to say. And I'll be referring to him in future videos. So just start with the economics aspect in the process of minimum wage. But for now, and now you know more of the story. Stay tuned. This is John McCamick with Truth University. Good day.